they don't see the everyday energy it takes just to go out to a shop or just to do what I do. So I am proud of pushing through.
Welcome to another episode of Bigger Than the Hustle podcast, and today I'm excited. I've got my first disabled guest. Now, she's a local disabled blogger and a consultant. She uses her experience of being in a wheelchair to train companies about the barriers and the right way to communicate with disabled people. So I'm excited because I have to be honest, I only have a few people of disability in my life, and they are brilliant in terms of the energy they bring to me. So I'm sure Gem's going to, bring that into the conversation today. So without further ado, hi Gem.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem at all. Now, I'm going to hand over the mic to you for a few moments. If you can introduce yourself and how you come into the world, and then we can roll with the conversation from there.
Yes, so my name is Gem, like the stone. I always like to say that. I just to sort of set the scene for people. I'm a wheelchair user. I'm 3'1", very outgoing, very ambitious. And ever since I was young, I've sort of tackled people's stereotypes around disability. Which I'm sure we'll get into today, but the main ones really are just sort of low expectations of disabled people, almost like inspirational, aren't they amazing for doing what they do, which is lovely, but I'm sure again we'll get into it where, to have that constantly has an impact on someone's daily life. So as I got older, I kind of took on those stereotypes and thought, what can I do to educate people a little bit more about how to just interact with disabled humans and make their lives a little bit easier. Now I'm a disabled blogger and consultant. I like to share my life through the lens of a wheelchair user. I try and do it with a bit of humour, very light-hearted. Along the way, I've sort of got a little bit of a following and really appreciate, talking to people openly and honestly about disability. I'm always learning about other disabilities, and I'm just passionate about people treating others with as less judgments as possible to get that really genuine connection. So that's quite a long intro, but there's a lot going on from when I was born to now, and I'm just trying to use that to educate, really.
Yeah, and it's brilliant because what I heard from there, Gem, is that you're trying to move the conversation forward, right? I know there's been a time when there's been a lot of misinformation, there's been a lot of misunderstanding in terms of disability and how it affects people's lives. And now with the rise of technology, the internet, there's so many more conversations that can be shared, whether in person, whether that be in written form, whether that be in video form. And it's brilliant in that respect. There's downsides and upsides to both, which I'm sure, we can talk about. But from right now, Gem, as a person, what was it that created the confidence that you have to go out to organizations and companies to talk about disabilities and how to communicate? And where did that come from within you?
That's a good question. I think it was when I realised that other people are more nervous to speak to me than I am to them. So I could go to a big company, let's just say a media industry, and even the toppest people, when that's not a word, but let's pretend it is. I was like, senior people, I would go into the room and suddenly people would clam up, they wouldn't know whether to shake my hand or not. And it was then that I realised that we can all teach each other something, you know, like even the top dogs don't know how to interact with some people. So I think the confidence just came from knowing that, like you said, really, that we all have a purpose. And my purpose, I believe, is to share this knowledge to decrease other people's, you know, uncomfortable conversations that they have every day. Because it's such a big thing for people, you know, it affects every part of their lives, whether that's just going to the supermarket, whether it's going to the doctors, you know, it impacts everybody's lives. So, yeah, I think the confidence just came from knowing that not everybody's an expert, and I'm an expert in this particular area, so why not share it?
And you being open to different points of view, I think, is probably a huge starting point in terms of understanding that, saying, even though I see myself in a certain way, others' lenses and others' filters, people's filters, see me in lots of different ways. Yeah. So how can I communicate in a way which then breaks down a lot of the barriers, which are obviously in our head a lot of the time? And I'm sure, you know, I take a step back and I think, okay, if I see someone in a wheelchair, for me personally is I try and not see the wheelchair, try and see the person, but then am I then being disrespectful in that way because the way I see is that I want to treat that person as another person that I don't see physically. You know, we talk about the physical disability. No one talks about the mental disabilities, right? There's so many scars and wounds that we have as people based on our past, but we don't see those, but we see physicalities. Now, which way would you say to me in terms of, I'm trying to treat someone as a human being, but sometimes they may say, you're only seeing me as a human being, but you're not seeing the difficulties that I face. Whereas other people may say, it's brilliant that you see me as just another human being as the same as you, just with a different way we come into the world. What would your conversation be with me if I'm saying, which way should I, you know, try and respect both viewpoints?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think for me, being a wheelchair user is a massive part of my identity. So if somebody said to me, which I get quite a lot, I don't see your wheelchair, I just see you, it's almost ignoring the barriers that I've achieved, you know, I've sort of tackled, and my wheelchair is such a positive thing. I think that's another thing, is that when people see wheelchairs, it's sort of pity and negativity, when actually it's just part of me that gets me around day to day. If I didn't have my wheelchair, then it'd be really sad because I'd be sat in one place all the time. So I think that's the first thing, is changing that narrative of what a wheelchair does. And yeah, I think I would much rather someone acknowledge that I'm a wheelchair user. You know, some friends have even said to me, you're not disabled, you're just sat down. And I'm just like, can we not just acknowledge that I'm a wheelchair user? Like, it's not a swear word. So yeah, I think it's just about acknowledging someone's experience. Obviously, everyone's experience is different. So for me, I was born and I was a wheelchair user from the age of 2, whereas for someone else, if they had an injury, the wheelchair might be related to some kind of trauma. So, you know, there's different ways of what a wheelchair might mean, which is then difficult because everyone's experience is so different. But yeah, I would say not acknowledging someone's disability could hinder the conversation. And it's like any marginalised group, you know, it's acknowledging that there are barriers out there in society. And I'd much rather have that conversation than it, you know, disability be a word that you can't say, and some people say specially abled or differently abled, and to me it just ignores my journey in life, really.
And what was quite interesting, something you said there was, when we talk about, wheelchair, it's real. It's not something that, it's like a bag that you can take off and put back on. It's part of your identity, right? Especially when it's been part of your identity your whole life. And that identity then, just like, if I say I have run a business for 20 years, that's part of my identity currently. It doesn't mean it's me. It doesn't mean that's the whole me. It's the one that I wear, just like yourself. Disability is one of the hats you wear, part of your life. But then, you are a friend, you are a relative, you are a business, consultant. It's all these different masks and all these different hats we wear, right? And it seems like that one's the most visible, obviously, but it's not your full identity. And I think that's the thing, that the value in what you're saying to me is that to say respect this, but respect me as a person, not just this thing that you see behind me. Now, if we're going to lighten the conversation on wheelchairs, because I don't know much about wheelchairs.
Oh yeah.
Do you get different models and different ranges, like cars, that you can pick and choose what you want?
Yeah, you can. And I always like to play a game of how much do you think my wheelchair cost?
Okay. Is yours electric?
Mine's electric.
Okay. Perfect.
And I will say it's higher than £1,000, just to give you.
Okay, so I have no clue on wheelchairs. So if I had to buy one and it was electric, and I can see the huge fun in that, really, myself, I would say probably your because it has a motor and a battery. But is it rechargeable then? Is it?
It is, yeah. It's like a phone thing.
So do you get tax benefits for that? Because now car users are getting tax benefits for being electric right now.
No, don't.
Unfortunately, there. See, thinking as a business person all the time.
Yeah, it's not safe on the road, but unfortunately.
And no exhaust fumes, so it's brilliant for the environment. So all right. I would say probably around 2,500, probably.
Completely under 24,000.
You're joking?
I'm not joking. Wow. And this is what I mean when I say a wheelchair is my pride and joy. Like, it's more than a car. Well, a very good car.
It's more than my car, anyway.
This is it.
I have a bike.
It's something that I had to write to charities to get funding for. You can get NHS chairs that are like 1,000, 2,000. A really good sports chair might be £9,000. That's a manual one.
Yeah.
So there's that stigma of wheelchairs are bad, they're sad. But actually, if you're in the wheelchair industry, you're earning a lot of money to get, clients.
You're giving me huge ideas here, Gemma.
This is it. And it is. So there's that. Anyway, there's many models. This one that I've got is, top of the range, because
so is it like the equivalent of like a Lamborghini of wheelchairs?
I mean, I'd like to think so.
There you go. So can you pimp your ride then? How can you pimp your ride?
The only thing I do is at Christmas time I put fairy lights on the back.
Yes.
But that's about as much as I do. Because to be honest, I already get a lot of attention, so I think pimping it up in any way would just be like, I'd be asking for it. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
Like local celebrity then. You get some nice alloys. Get some nice spinning alloys on it.
Honestly, the amount of taxi drivers who say like, oh, you're going to get alloys, and I have no idea what these words mean, and I'm like, yeah.
Now,
but yeah, it's very special to me. It's
And so much of your, the things we take for granted as able-bodied people, like within your home, for example, whenever you plan to go anywhere, there's a trip you want to make, there's so many more decisions you need to make, and probably so many more calls you need to make, right? So say, for example, today, obviously we're in a lockdown situation, so it's not going to be possible right now, but say a year's time when everything's eased up, and you wanted to go to the Natural History Museum in London, for example, okay? What kind of decisions would you need to make? Because I know what I'd have to do. I'd have to think, okay, how do I want to get there? Train or car? If I'm going by car, where am I going to park? And then how am I going to get to where is it actually there? And that's the extent, and when am I going to go? That's the extent of my decisions. What is different with you in terms of what decisions you need to make? So how would you think about that trip?
Yeah. See, you just saying that makes me sweat. Like, having to think about, going anywhere is a situation.
Yeah.
If I want to book a taxi, they say we need at least 24 hours notice. So being disabled means spontaneity is out the cards. If you want to go on a train, it's the same thing. So you have to book 24 hours for the ramp. You have to think about energy of the people around you and what, are you going to get anybody interacting with you that's a bit, uncomfortable? There's that side of things. So yeah, there's a lot of organisation involved. There's always, what if it goes wrong? There's always that in the back of my head. And I think lockdown has kind of given some empathy, I think, to what it's like. I'm not saying it's the same, but what it's like when you're disabled, because we're out of control. We're being told when and when we can't go out. And, we're not allowed to go to other people's houses, which, I can't get into most of my friends' houses, so there's a lot of the same sort of logistics. But yeah, it's such a big thing. And I think it's trying to tell people and asking them to care, because, they might say, oh, well, you can do it. So I try and teach people that it's not just about being able to logistically do it. It's about making it as easy as possible. So, why can't I book a taxi instantly like everybody else? It's changing that narrative of only having the basics for disabled people. When actually, if you give us the tools to thrive, we can be part of society just like everybody else. So yeah, there's a lot. There's logistics, there's energy, there's people, and the people side I think is the most energy for me, because I'm quite an extrovert. I read people really well. So if I see someone staring at me on a train, I've clocked them, and I'm trying to suss out how to deal with that. Like my friends will just say, just ignore them, don't worry about it. And I can't, because I just want to be like, do you want to chat? Do you want a picture? Like, what? It's just my personality. So yeah, there's a lot there's a lot that goes into it.
And I think what is brilliant about what you just said there is, if you saw someone stay, for example, you, rather than creating your own story about it, it's, okay, how do I shift their story about what they're seeing? Because it's those conversations that really move things forward. It's like even today, having this conversation with you, it's already shifting so much in my mind. And this is within 20 minutes. And therefore, it's brilliant that these conversations get highlighted and raised, because it just makes you more aware. First of all, awareness is always the first point, isn't it, for anything to move forward. And then if there's any action you want to create based on that awareness, it's possible, because now you know where or what you need to do. So there's a lot of people that listen to this that have their own business, that run, whether it be small business, whether it be part of an organization. What kind of things do you think we should be thinking about as business owners, whether it be a small business or a one-man band or a larger organization, to then not just accommodate but be more welcoming for disabled people?
It's a good question. I think the first thing is to, if you're thinking about disability, make sure you involve disabled people. It sounds basic, but I think the best way to get it right is to get the people who have lived experience. And something that I teach quite a lot is, intention can only go so far. So you can intend to be really inclusive, but actually, are you actually pushing disabled people further away? And then in terms of how to welcome disabled people, whether that's you're selling things or whether you're recruiting. I think be brave and invite people. It's the thing I said about people don't say disabled. But how are you going to make sure that people feel welcome if you never say that you're looking for a certain group of people? So when I'm working with people around recruitment, I'll say, it's okay to say we're looking for disabled people. And people will go, oh, I didn't think about that. So it's like, how are you going to move on and progress if you don't actually name that, there's an area that you need to improve on? Because if I saw a job and then someone said, oh, actually, we're looking for wheelchair users, I'd be like, ding, 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 I've got a wheelchair. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I'll say those are the three things that we're quite at the beginning stage, I think, of disability and business. I think we're only just thinking about it. So, yeah, try and get the basics down of acknowledging that the change needs to happen.
And something you've just touched upon just there, in terms of we're still, like you said, we're still at the start of lots of things that are possible and can happen. But if we rewind, say, 10 years ago, which things have moved forward that you can physically see from what life was like then to what life is like now?
I think the main thing for me is you touched on it at the beginning about our voices are being heard a lot more. I think back in the day before the internet, our stories were being told for us. If you look at TV and, media in general, films, whereas now social media means that we can be like, oh no, wait a minute, actually, it's like this for us, and we can come together a lot as well. And the different platforms mean that, whatever barrier you've got, there's a platform out there that you can share your message with. So yeah, I think it's that we can speak a lot more now about what the barriers are. And there's no excuse really to say we didn't know about that, because if you Google, you can probably find a lot more information now.
Yes. And do you think that where we are right now and where you would like to see things, say, in the next 10 years, what point would you say this next 10 years would have been a success if we reached that certain point? Because I know 10 years is not a huge amount of time, right? Even as I get older, I realize that time just seems to be moving quicker and quicker. Yeah. So if we say the next 10 years to move the conversation on disability forward, what needs to happen over that period of time?
Oh, well, I could do a whole dissertation on this. What needs to happen? I think a massive thing for me is around being proactive rather than reactive, which is something that I talk about quite a lot. And I think I'm hoping in 10 years' time that people actively think about disabled people. Because I think that's the problem at the moment, is that, say if a campaign comes out and it's not representative of disability, it takes the community to flag it for change to happen. Whereas I'm hoping in 10 years' time, I think conversations around diversity are getting better. But in terms of feeling confident around disability, I don't think we're there. So I think, preempting, we're doing a video, has it got subtitles? I'm doing an event, is it step 3 so that wheelchair users can get in? It's those proactive steps that I hope people start thinking about, rather than me coming in and saying, don't forget about this.
And I think what helped hugely was the Paralympics in London. We went there. When was that? I can't remember the year.
Was it 2012?
Yeah, something. Yeah, that sounds about right. And when that we went to see we went to see basketball, I think it was, and there was a
Mm,
few long distance events. It was brilliant. Just and so many people. So I've not been to the actual Olympics, but I've seen it on TV, and I think that's huge. I love those type of sports and those kind of movement activities.
mm,
But going to the Paralympics, what it opened my eyes to was, first of all, that there's just the same energy as in the main, the main event in terms of the main Olympics, and then you've got
mm,
Paralympics. But secondly, was that I just found that there seemed to be more heart and more soul in the people that were competing.
mm,
So I saw some of the basketball players, and you could see they were just enjoying it so much,
mm,
just having that ability to, represent their country and compete on a like for like stage with other people. And we had such an amazing time, and we went as a family, so there was about 20 of us that went with my kids and stuff like that. And it was so good to see it, because obviously being in London as well, it was so close to home, and there was no reason to not to attend. That's the way I saw it.
mm,
And it just opened my eyes so much to what is out there, because I would have to say, hands up, that I don't know that much, because it's not in my reality, it's not in my
mm,
world. And unfortunately, I don't make time to do that, not in a negative way, but not in a way of saying, actually, I don't see, I am aware, but there doesn't never seems to be a reason that I need to get involved unless I'm helping organize something or helping an event. But day to day, it doesn't. So,
mm.
therefore, what do you think I should, as a human being, so not just as a business owner, but as a person, and to be more mindful of disabled people in the way I live my life?
Oh, that's a good question. I think obviously the representation that you've just talked about is a massive thing. So seek out representation. That's a massive thing for me. Is you don't know what you don't know is
Mm,
the classic line. So you have to seek out. So there's that, and then I would say a big thing that I think is really powerful is when we're organising meetings, even when you're organising social events, just saying, let me know if you require any access adjustments. It's the everyday preempting that not everybody might be able to get involved.
yeah.
If you're making food, you always ask, have you got any allergies? So it's that one step further of, if you want to come to this thing, what can I do to make it welcoming? And I've started integrating that into my everyday. And you'll be very surprised at people who aren't disabled who say, oh, actually, yeah, when I do an interview, I find it really helpful if I get the questions before. And that's an adjustment. They're not
Mm,
disabled, but it's just a really inclusive thing to do. So, yeah, I would just say preempt that we can all make changes
mm.
to welcome people. And once you start doing that, it becomes best practice and it becomes an everyday part of your life.
Brilliant. Yes. And it's like I said, once the awareness is open from your mind and your eyes, then it's just a case of, I understand now what are the steps and how can I do that. And I'm sure there's so much help out there anyway. It's just, someone that says they don't know something these days, it's just, I see it as laziness, because it's so easy to find information these days, right? But
Yeah.
how good that information is for you to decipher in terms of the range of things you look at. But now, if I talk about you as a person, Jem,
Yes.
what or who do you think inspires you most today?
Ooh, that's a good question. There's a woman who sadly isn't with us anymore, but she was called Stella Young. She was Australian, and she had the same condition as me, and basically was an advocate in the Australian, globally actually. And she was the first person that I saw who looked like me, doing a TED Talk. And I think that was the moment when I was like, oh, I could do that. So yeah, Stella Young was a massive inspiration. And that representation was really powerful. And that was when I was about 15, I think. So yeah, she was someone who really inspired me.
And talking about us taking care of ourselves, because I feel that that always has to be the first point for us as human beings. We try and build ourselves to be strong so that we can be strong for the people around us. So what do you think self-love means to you?
Oh, good question. Something that I talk about a lot is boundaries. That's something that I'm really learning, even in my 20s now. Boundaries in terms of my information is mine, and I can share it when I want to share it. Being an advocate is very fulfilling, it's very, rewarding, but also it's massively tiring. I get burnout a lot, energy-wise and physically. And I think it's about, say if I'm on a train and somebody comes up to me and says, oh, why are you in a wheelchair then? Which happens quite a lot. It's telling myself that it's okay to say, do you know what, I'm on a train. I don't want to talk about that right now. And that doesn't make me selfish, or it doesn't make me a bad advocate. It just means that I'm not ready to say that while I'm popping to a shop. So yeah, boundaries have become a really important part of who I am, and almost feeling empowered that, I can share what I want when I want, and that's okay.
Brilliant. And it's the same as, saying no to others to say yes to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's a conversation which I've had to learn. And now I'm so glad that if I'm not the strongest version of myself because I've worked on myself, then what use am I to anyone else around me in my life? So just another peek under the covers, Gem. Is there anything that you're proud of that no one knows about?
Oh, anything no one knows of. I think, does it... I think people don't realise how much energy it takes just to be me. And I'm really proud of pushing that. They don't see the everyday energy it takes just to go out to a shop or just to do what I do. So I am proud of pushing through. Yeah, it sounds cheesy, but I think just living everyday life and pushing for independence, is a massive thing for me. That I'm only just starting to tell people, how it is.
Yeah, and it's that energy you put into everyday life, isn't it? Because, and I fully see that it's not. I feel sometimes I may have hard days, but then put myself in a wheelchair with that hard day, and that augments the whole thing, doesn't it? It just increases everything. So I completely respect that, and I'm glad that you can openly express that, because it is important to express those thoughts, because they're real and they're real to you. And anything that we feel that we should acknowledge ourselves for, we should, and that's the way it is, right?
Yeah, but I think there's a balance though of, it's hard. You don't want sympathy. You just want to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
That there are barriers, and I'm constantly mentally toing and froing from trying to tell people what it's like, but I don't want a pat on the head. I just want you to say, oh yeah, that's a bit rubbish, that, isn't it? It's difficult.
Yeah, get that. So now let's lighten the conversation
Yeah.
We're going to go into a quick fire question round.
Yeah.
So this is where I'm going to ask you 10 random questions. And you just take a moment and answer, or don't take a moment and answer, which is even better, because then a natural answer comes out, even though most of the time it doesn't represent anything about us, but it's just a bit of fun.
Okay.
So let's see what this throws out. And like I said, this is completely random, so it's not pre-planned. So I'm just going to throw some questions out there and you answer in the best way you feel represents you. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go and why?
Barcelona, because apparently there's not many steps, and I really want to go.
Who is your favourite superhero and why?
Oh, I like that one that's silver and Silver Surfer, because I just feel like how fun would that be to surf in the sky.
Are you a morning or a night person?
I was a night person before lockdown, and now lockdown's made me some kind of morning person.
What is one of your weird quirks?
That I really, really love small talk. But I will talk to a shopkeeper about his health, how he's doing, is he mentally okay? Like, yeah, I can chat to anybody.
Perfect. How many books have you read so far this year?
Probably like 2. I'm not very good at reading. I can read, but yeah, I don't make time for it.
If you could be world famous for one thing, what would it be for?
I think for being funny, like to make people laugh, to entertain them. Yeah.
Perfect. What is your lifelong dream?
Oof. To make people think twice before they meet somebody is, yeah.
How long does it take you to get ready in the morning?
Oof. Depends what kind of day it is. Between 15 minutes and half an hour. Depends what I'm doing.
What is the one thing you've always wanted to do?
Oof. Go on the Eurostar.
And if you could write a book about your life, what would it be called?
See, I've already got something in my brain. It would be called something like It's Not Me, It's Society.
Very good. I can already see that happening.
Yeah, it's in the drafts at the moment.
Perfect. Well, let me know when that draft becomes a final reality. I know that can take a lot of time and a lot of energy, and when you can do that and when that can happen, I know is out of our hands a lot of the time. It's okay whenever it happens. But that would be brilliant because, like I said, it's showing it from a different perspective, isn't it? And like it's interesting. I talked to my son about this, and I say, "Okay, where am I?" And he'll be, "You're over there." I said, "No, where am I?" And he says, "You're over there." I said, "No, where am I?" He goes, "You're over there." I said, "No, I'm in here. You're seeing me in here, and I'm your retinas and your sound, all your senses are telling you I'm here, but I'm in your head." And then he says to me, "Daddy, so therefore, if I'm in your head, does that mean everything's in my head?" I go, "Yeah, everything's in your head. It's called perspective." So he's 10 years old. So I say, it's perspective, is how you see things. I could look at a glass, you look at a glass, and we see different things, even though it's the same thing. Yeah. And as long as you understand that, you realize that everyone has a different perspective. So don't ever get frustrated or angry or down about perspectives. You have your perspective and someone else has theirs. And if you don't agree, just say, that's your opinion, or in your humble opinion, in my humble opinion is this. And that's it. It's those kind of conversations. Then he said to me, "Does anyone else exist in the world if I'm the only real person?" I was like, there we go.
Boom.
There we go.
Yeah. 10 years old, I love that you do it.
This is the joy.
Yeah.
This is the joy I have, in terms of even talking to him. At 10 years old, I don't think I even thought about anything like that apart from, should we play outside or should we play inside? I think that's
literally, yeah. I love that.
So, as we reach towards the end of the podcast, Gemma, I'd just like to ask you a few more questions so that the listeners understand a little bit more about you and the way you think. Okay? Mm-hmm. So we're going to fast forward 100 years into the future. We've reached the last moments of your life now. You don't have enough energy to speak, but you have enough energy to write 3 words. Now, these 3 words have resonated with you all your life and they've helped you. And you help by sharing them, it can help the people that are listening. What would those 3 words be for you and why?
Mine would be, but what if? Do you want me to expand?
Yes, please.
Because my whole thing is about when you meet people and you have that perception, but as soon as I start talking, people realise that image that they had is completely different. And my conversations are like, yeah, but what if I could get in there? What would happen? Or what if you didn't say hello to me? We wouldn't be having this chat right now. So, yeah, those 3 words to me are really powerful. Not just, people talking to me, but me talking to other people. I check myself constantly about what am I thinking, what am I doing, how am I acting? Not in terms of overthinking, just checking myself, really.
Mm-hmm. And I think 2 keywords that jumped out to me when you said that was possibility and potential. By doing something, we create new possibilities, don't we? Like you said, just saying hello or opening the door or sending an email, whatever, you're opening up possibilities. And that possibility may be sparking a potential which you've not even seen yet until you create that. So they're exciting thoughts there. Now, this podcast is called Bigger Than the Hustle, and right now you're bigger than the world. So I've got a mic which is connected to 7.58 billion people on this planet.
Yeah.
They're all awake. They're all conscious. They can all understand you, so there's no language barrier, and they're all listening.
Yeah.
If I could hand over the microphone for the next 30 seconds, what would your message be to the world?
I would tell them about the social model of disability, which I can expand on. Which is basically that it's a theory that instead of looking at someone's condition and who they are and trying to, in quotes, cure them, the social model of disability looks at the environment and it says if we changed something about our environment, would that make someone less able to do something or more able? So, for example, if I had ramps everywhere, I would be a lot more able to get round and about. So, yeah, I would tell them about the social model of disability and hope that people audit their own lives and think, what can I change, to make a more inclusive environment.
Perfect. And I can see that was spoken from the heart and you've thought about it and there's some mind energy that's gone into that. So thank you for that, Gem. Now, at this juncture, I'd like to acknowledge you and thank you. Thank you for coming on today. Thank you for sharing your insights. It's really been eye-opening for me as well. Your honesty with a bit of humor as well, which I think always lightens the mood, which is always brilliant.
Yeah.
And just the work you're doing, to move society forward, hopefully, 100 years in the future, 200 years in the future, when you're gone, the work that you're starting here will continue and grow through other wheelchairs and other energies that you pass the baton on to. So thank you, Gemma. Just before we go, is there anything else you'd like to share or add?
I don't think so. I've really enjoyed my time with you today. Thank you so much. And I really love conversations that get into the deep stuff, It's talking about our experiences and our thoughts. And yeah, I love an open conversation. So Thank you for inviting me.
No problem at all. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to hook up Gemma's details on the show notes, so contact details, social media links, etc. So if you guys do want to lift the conversation, she's always ready to have that conversation.
I am.
She's very open and honest as well, and the more people that can get in touch with her and just be open, and just, if it's ignorance you're facing, then accept it and say, I don't want to be ignorant anymore. Which way can we change that? And it's that authenticity, I think, that people appreciate the most. It's not that you have those thoughts, it's what you're choosing to shift those thoughts with. And I think that's so important, that if we realize that and we take accountability, we take honesty with that we can then say, which way can we move this forward? Ignorance used to be bliss, but it's no longer is, because we need to then say, actually, I've been ignorant about this, and now I'm choosing not to be. And I think that honesty, is needed so much more in the world. So again, thank you so much, Gemma, for your time, and hopefully the people that need to hear this do hear that. Now, I'm Bhavik Patel. I'm the host of the podcast Bigger Than the Hustle, and right now I'd just like to leave you with a few thoughts before we go. Big energy leads to big thoughts lead to big ideas lead to big actions, and big actions lead to a big life. So keep thinking big. Until next week, goodbye.
To give things a go, regardless what's happening and regardless of what's going on around you, to be your best self and to give everything a bash, as they say in Scotland. Give it a bash, give it a try, and see where it takes you.